Welcome back to The Beat. We have been covering more than one big story here, ending a pretty busy week, and this came up when I was discussing it with Nicolle Wallace at the top of our program. These are explosive new allegations against a pretty prominent Republican Congressman, Matt Gaetz. The New York Times reporting on a DOJ probe over allegations of a pay-for-sex scheme. The Times citing sources close to the federal probe that say this is all about Congressman Gaetz's involvement with multiple women, recruited online, quote, for sex and receiving cash payments. The probe initiated with Gaetz's associate, a former Florida tax collector named Joel Greenberg. Now, he was already indicted. This was last year on crimes that include federal sex trafficking. He has pled not guilty. The Times reports, though, that Greenberg would meet women online and then introduce them to Gaetz, who would then, quote, have sex with them. And according to people close to the investigation, quote, some of the men and women took ecstasy, an illegal mood-altering drug, before having sex, including, the Times reports, Mr. Gaetz. The Times also reviewed payments, evidence, money that went to women that were made with online apps, reportedly showing, for example, a payment to a woman from Gaetz. We want to mention, we're quoting the Times report, NBC News has not been able to independently review those underlying receipts and documents. Now, what does Gaetz' office say? Quote, that he never paid for sex and that he, quote, refutes all the allegations completely. As always, we want to bring you that side of the story. That's his position now. This comes, though, days after Gaetz did confirm that there is a DOJ investigation, that it does regard these issues. He just said the underlying allegations against him were totally false and that he was a subject, not a target. Now, to be clear, no charges have been brought against Gaetz at this time. He is a prominent congressman. He is known for his very public, very recurring loyalty to Donald Trump. And his communications director, meanwhile, has now resigned today, citing, quote, principle. We are joined by Dave Aronberg, state attorney for Palm Beach County, and David Korn, Washington bureau chief for Mother Jones. There's a lot here, and some of it is obviously scandalous, David, in its contours, in the receipts and the allegations. We also, as always, are careful to report the nuance and the fact that Mr. Gaetz has not been charged and his denials. When you take it all together here, what do you have for this very, very vocal Trump ally in the Republican Party, David?
Well, you know, I always thought of Matt Gaetz as Donald Trump's mini-me, and that he wanted to be, that he wasn't a member of Congress looking to legislate. He was a member of Congress looking to troll, and to troll on behalf of Donald Trump. In fact, he used to put out press releases anytime Donald Trump said something positive about him. He thought that was big news. So he was really a leader of the Trumpiest of the Trump members of the House. And so he had a future in this, maybe a future at a conservative network, maybe a future leading some of these people in Congress more so. But it's quite interesting that the investigation was begun by the Trump Justice Department when Trump Attorney General Bill Barr was in charge, when Bill Barr had instituted or told guidances to the Justice Department to be very careful when it comes to looking at elected officials. So that, again, you want to be careful, and we should be careful. But that seems to me that Barr instituted, no pun here, a high bar for these type of inquiries if they involved an elected member of Congress. So the fact that this happened under the Trump regime shows you or indicates that there's some serious stuff here. And it probably will take a little while for us to find out all the details and to see whether or not it's enough for him to be indicted.
Yeah, and you make a fair nuanced point there. You're low-key insulting Bill Barr's integrity, although you wouldn't be the first. He had more veterans of the department call for his resignation than any AG in history. But you're making the point that if he was going to use that, as you put it, higher bar, this still clearly cleared that. As for how Gaetz made himself such a big figure, at least in right-wing circles, let's take a look at some of his commentary.
Matt Gaetz seen here wearing a gas mask as the House passed a multi-billion-dollar funding bill to fight the coronavirus outbreak.
What we see from this Marxist movement in Black Lives Matter to totally overturn our country.
The left in America has incited far more political violence than the right.
What we see in this impeachment is a kangaroo court, and Chairman Schiff is acting like a malicious Captain Kangaroo.
There was ballot laundering going on here.
that's how he talked, Dave. But as a lawyer, you're not here to analyze whether he sounds ridiculous or not, or thirsty or anything of the like. But other Republican colleagues who may become witnesses were concerned about the legality. For example, more than half a dozen telling the Daily Beast that they knew of Gaetz's use of alcohol and illegal drugs, the proclivity, as they put it, for, quote, younger women, well known among Republican lawmakers. Gaetz was dating a college student over the age of consent, they say, in 2018. A former Republican staffer said Wednesday their office had an informal rule not to allow their member to appear next to Gaetz during TV hits. Dave.
Yeah, Ari, it's great to be here. First, I do think he sounded thirsty. As far as from a legal standpoint, he's got a lot of problems because child sex trafficking is punishable by up to life in prison. And I know that there are a lot of things that are salacious that are making the news, such as the drugs and the fact that he apparently showed pictures of nude women on the floor of the house. But as long as they were not underage girls, that's just salacious stuff that won't matter in this case. What matters is the Cash App. If prosecutors can show a tie between compensation, something of value, and sex acts, then you've got him. The challenge was that he admitted to hotel rooms and flights and expenses, but cash is king. And if you could show a pattern of these cash transactions around the same time that he had these hotel room encounters with this girl, then you really got him. Because the only way you're going to prove the sex acts is either through documentation like that, through the girl's testimony, or through Joel Greenberg, if he flips. And the good thing for Joel Greenberg now is that he's looking at a bigger fish than he is being investigated. And unfortunately for Matt Gaetz, he's looking around and there is no bigger fish, which means it's him.
Yeah, so Dave, what do you see in an investigation like this? What is left for them to do? Because the Times appears to have its hands on real evidence.
You know, Ari, I was wondering why it took 6 months to develop this investigation. But I think it's because child sex trafficking is not as easy as just finding the date of birth of a girl in question. I think now we know we're dealing with an underage girl because it's the same girl that's the victim in the charges against Joel Greenberg, the former Seminole County tax collector. So now the only question is, did Matt Gaetz have sex with this girl? If he did, at the very least, it's a second-degree felony in the state of Florida, punishable by up to 15 years in state prison. At worst for him, it's child sex trafficking, and you can get up to life. Another problem for Matt is that he could be engaged in a conspiracy. Joel Greenberg isn't just being charged with child sex trafficking. It's identity theft and wire fraud and a host of other things. Matt can be brought in and charged with all those same crimes if he was part of a conspiracy with Joel Greenberg. And there's evidence that he was. There's evidence, apparently, that he was caught on video inside the tax collector's office in Seminole County, rummaging around through IDs as part of an ID theft ring. Things are looking really badly for him.
Yeah, in conclusion, since you mentioned that, we'll put up briefly on the screen the Daily Beast reporting on that. Text messages that pointed the feds to Matt Gaetz, which include this pursuit of allegedly fake IDs. So as you mentioned, for viewers, we want to give the evidence. There's a lot here. Our standards rules require us to mention that Mr. Gaetz has denied all wrongdoing and has not been charged with a crime. But I think what David, and the reporting here mentioned shows is there's a lot of questions and what appears to be quite substantial evidence in this story.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.